If you would like to earn CPE credit for listening to the show, visit earmarkcpe.com/FPA. Download the app, take a short quiz, and get your CPE certificate. Finally, if you enjoy listening to FP&A today, please go to your podcast platform of choice, click the subscribe button, and leave a rating and review of the show. And now, on to the show.
From Data Rails, this is FP&A Today.
Welcome to FP&A Today. I'm your host, Glenn Hopper. Our guest today is Maria del Dado Alonso Sanchez. Dado is the former group CFO at BBG, a pioneer in the direct-to-consumer business, and has an impressive career spanning roles at Azerion, Naspers, CNA Netherlands, Booking.com, Amazon Europe, and Siemens. She holds multiple advanced degrees and certifications, including master's degrees in both law and business administration, a CMA, and a corporate governance certification from INSEAD. She is also a distinguished professional speaker, a member of the IFAC Professional Accountants and Business Advisory Group, and an advocate for women in AI. Let's dive into an incredible journey and insights on the future of finance. Dado, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Glenn. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to diving in today. You've got an impressive track record of companies you've worked for before. Can you kind of walk us through your career journey, maybe highlighting the key roles and types of work that you've been focused on?
Well, look, my journey actually starts in a very small town in traditional northern Spain, in León. With 2 degrees under my belt, I went to Germany in search of opportunities. And I have over 20 years as finance professional in blue chip companies, over 10 of them as finance director, as CFO. My first job at Siemens was as business finance controller. And since then, I actually learned to grow into different facets of the function. I actually consider that I grew as finance professional in Amazon. I was actually privileged to work in Europe Amazon when it went through significant transformation. At the time, that's when Prime was brought into Europe, actually, and Amazon Europe was created. So you can imagine what was the type of energy and good spirits that we had over there. Then in Booking, I was actually involved in a period where Booking.com had just been acquired by Priceline. We had started attacking the market, the US market, and we had actually expanded into housing vacation market. So also very, very transformational moment. And I would say, another pivotal experience in my career was Azerion. Azerion was a company that operated in gaming and online advertising, and it grew actually from 200 million euros to 500 million in almost 2.5 years. And, very dynamic. We acquired 15 companies. We raised 2 bonds. And ultimately, it was phenomenal because we actually went floated in Amsterdam Stock Exchange. Finally, as you well mentioned, I was formerly the group CFO at Berlin's Brand Group. It was private equity, backed by Bain Capital. I was leading the Ecommerce group, but we actually ended up in a leveraged buyout. So as you can see, my career has been nothing more than transformation, continue moving, and I cannot wait to dive in the new exciting challenges that come to me.
When I talk to guests who have such a broad range of experience, I like to talk to them about kind of what initially led you to finance and how your passion for FP&A has evolved over time. And I think this is especially interesting as a question for you because I know you also studied law before going into finance. So could you kind of tell me about your interest in finance and how it's evolved over the years?
I studied two degrees actually simultaneously. That was law and finance, business administration. It was always in my desire to explore always new horizons, right? And for me, it was always like the bigger the challenge, the more motivated I get. So that's good. I guess that is part of my personality. When I was studying, really, business controlling seemed to me the perfect role for me. That was what I was thinking, right? I had the luxury of the wide scope and business understanding. And I had also the exposure to strategic and tactical roles from a very, very starting in the career. and very important matters for the company, right? So you can actually influence quite a lot through insights and advice. I cannot hide it. I like power to influence and to create change. So that's how there is passion for continuous learning and also for finance and in particular for FP&A and business partnering.
And I almost don't know which companies to pick to talk about first because it's so many interesting companies. And I know like the KPIs across companies are going to be different, the metrics that you're tracking. And I guess, I don't know, man, I'll just, say as group CFO at BBG or at Azerion, could you tell us a little bit about the main KPIs and metrics you focused on at those companies?
Glenn, you have actually said it very well. Depending on the company you are in and the industry that company is operating, actually the KPIs, the metrics that you track are slightly different, right? But all in all, there are some common metrics that you track in every company, right? We are talking about revenue growth rate, gross margin, operating expenses, EBITDA, and free cash flow. I mean, I would say those are the common metrics that you always track. Then, actually, depending on whether a company is more on the leverage side or not, then you can also start tracking some debt metrics. But those are in general the metrics that you typically track. Now, if we talk about Berlin Brands Group, BBG, which was an e-commerce business, or Azerion, which was actually operating in digital entertainment, obviously, I mean, they are following and we used to follow different metrics, right? In Berlin Brands Group, e-commerce, as I said, inventory was very, very important. So in that case, we were tracking inventory turnover, so how many turns we were giving our inventory healthiness, the aging of the inventory, we could reel in many shapes and forms how the inventory was formed and so on. And then obviously the return rate, right? I mean, monitoring the percentage of products that are returned, the customer service information, that those were also very, very important to make sure that our trading would be as healthy as possible. In Azerion, actually, the type of metrics that we were tracking were a little bit different, right? I mean, we were talking about a company that was operating in gaming and in ad tech. So practically, the metrics, that the KPIs that we were using were daily active users, monthly active users, average revenue per user, average returned revenue. So practically revenue, I mean, metrics that are actually linked to the users, to the revenue, and the very, very top line type of metrics, right? So yeah, I mean, as I said, so depending on the sector, depending on the industry, you tend to focus on one or the other metric.
Yeah, and I guess a follow-up question that I hadn't considered on this before, moving from industry to industry, can you tell me a little bit about how, I mean, when you come into an industry, you sort of know the industry metrics that you're looking at, but when you're trying to establish yourself in this new industry, like what do you look at and what do you look for to help define those metrics and to get a better understanding of what you need to be tracking by those businesses?
First thing I do is to get actually my finance, let's say I call it finance footprint, right? And this is kind of like the small contract that I sign with my manager, typically the CEO, right? And with that, I get quite a good understanding of where the situation of the company is, right? So what are the challenges? What is the strategic mandate? What is practically, the positioning of the company and how we want to track operationally the delivery and the results, right? Starting from that business insight, that's where I start thinking about, okay, so what should be the metrics that we should track, right? I'm always looking at metrics that are, that are very, very close to operations, because I think that building that link between operations and finance is the best way to creating insights that are actionable. And that is kind of a positive flywheel. So it gives information to the business of how to improve results. And it also positions finance at the table, right, at the decision table, because we go there talking kind of the same the same language.
Bouncing from those two companies, I can't imagine what the environment was like at Booking.com or Amazon Europe at that point in time, rolling Prime out in the EU. And sometimes we learn a lot from these. Maybe in hindsight, they're pretty stressful times when things are just moving that quickly. So I'm wondering, being at those places, at those big companies at important times in their evolution. How did your experiences there shape your approach to financial leadership? What kind of lessons and takeaways did you get from that?
To say short, they were phenomenal, right? So I can elaborate a little bit more, of course, but they were phenomenal. I love a very dynamic and fast-paced environment. That's where I thrived, and I like the energy. I like positive energy. I like when you have teams that join together to build something, and that's, I think, something that it's a positive energy that you get in this type of environments. So in this case, Booking and Amazon, they were, as I said, very, very dynamic and fast-paced. I can only say that both experiences really, kind of learned me the importance of agility. So being fast and being quick in whatever you do allows you the possibility to fail also very quick and learn very fast from your mistakes, right? So this is very important in a fast growing environment. And the other thing that I learned very fast and by need was actually adaptability. So you need to keep yourself flexible in finding that middle way to find your way and get things done and progress and continue progressing, right? In Amazon in particular, I learned the meaning of customer obsession. I know this is one of the Amazon principles, right? Leadership principles, but I can assure you, customer obsession is the first principle, and everybody from the first, from the CEO to the associate in the fulfillment center really is, feel very, very strongly the power of customer obsession. In the case of Booking, there was one thing that was very powerful, right? It was the 80-20 principle. And it was around this Pareto principle: 20% of the effort, you kind of tackle 80% of the need. And that was, when you are in an environment that is growing very fast, being very aware of not investing too much time on getting the, kind of gold plating the results. That's very important because it allows you to move much, much faster. So I would say this pragmatism and the customer-centric approach, those have been really vital in how I approach finance.
Yeah, great point on that. And I think people in finance and accounting, we are risk averse. So there's always the, measure twice, cut once, and slow down. But it's hard to do that when you're also trying to grow a company really fast. You can't have finance and accounting be looked at as, someone that's slowing the company down. So you have to sort of find that balance between move fast, but also be right, because people have to trust the numbers. You have so much experience in direct to consumer business, and I'm wondering if the nature of that and maybe the pace of growth, but the fact that you're dealing with the with so many clients in the direct or so many customers in that direct to consumer business, were there challenges and opportunities that you think come out of your experience working with that group?
Absolutely. I mean, my experience in direct to consumer was pretty much in Berlin Brands Group, right? My last role. And what you need to understand, or the audience also needs to understand, is Berlin Brands Group was, let's say 400 million revenue business, and was operating, over 8,000 SKUs of products, right? Selling through different channels and also through our own stores, online stores. So in that context, what happens is you have practically the whole complexity of having to deal with consumers directly, but also with a very, very complex footprint in terms of channels, right? So that is what made it very, very difficult because or challenging, because in a way you need to learn very fast that how not to cannibalize your own sales depending on the channel, but at the same time you are very much exposed to everything that is going on in the market, right? In the case of Berlin Brands Group, when I joined, that was in summer 2022. And summer 2022 actually was the summer that was the e-commerce downturn in Europe. So practically the majority of the markets were really suffering from the post-COVID hype in terms of e-commerce. That required a very, very deep readjustment. So if you add all that complexity with a deep readjustment. And you put that in combination with a very fast growing company where initial investments are not done properly, or they are done fostering the growth but not necessarily the back office and support functions. That's practically what makes it the perfect combination for a challenging environment.
Makes sense. And I think, going from e-commerce to technology to retail, I mean, what do you think? Would you say there's differences in financial strategies across those various industries, or how would you explain the similarities and differences between them?
Yeah, I mean, you have said, right. I mean, in my career, I have had the privilege actually to work across different industries. I worked in e-commerce, technology, gaming, ad tech, in online hospitality, and each sector really presented its unique financial challenges and strategies. They were actually tailored pretty much to the business model and the market dynamics. So, for instance, in Berlin Brands Group and Amazon, both e-commerce companies, the focus was on scaling operations and optimizing supply chain efficiencies, right? In those companies, dynamic pricing, inventory management, and significant investments in technology were actually the key strategies to improve user experience and increase conversion rates. If I think about Azerion, the gaming and ad tech sector, financial strategy was centered around user acquisition and retention, diverse monetization models, continuous innovation. Substantial budgets were actually also allocated to marketing campaigns and research and development to stay ahead of the evolving tech landscape. So yeah, depends on a little bit what is the environment at that point. In Booking and Priceline, we highlighted the importance of global footprint. So in that case, global expansion and the metrics and challenges that were linked to that were more important. So that's, as I said. So in my experience across the different industries, the industry is triggering also a different positioning and a different approach towards the strategy and the challenges.
Yeah, and when you mention the global environment, I think about how difficult it can be to do financial modeling in forecasting, even in a B2B or a software company where you have long lead times and all that. But in a global e-commerce, everything changes so quickly, and there's so many things that are exogenous factors that are outside of your control. And I'm wondering, it, what was your approach to financial modeling and forecasting in the global e-commerce space?
Global e-commerce space, as you can see from Amazon experience was over 10 years back. Berlin Brands Group has been my last experience, right? So it has pretty much accompanied me throughout my career. I would say my approach is actually quite pragmatic, right? First and foremost, you need to invest in the creation of the right database. You need to ensure that you have strong data, and governance is really essential. While this involves actually defining clear and consistent metrics, you need to talk to other stakeholders. You need to have a common language across the company. And by doing so, you can create actually the solid foundation for reliable data that afterwards everyone in the organization is going to be able to use and trust. Once you have that reliable data, and that infrastructure in place, then that's cool, right? Because then you start democratizing the access to this data, and it becomes really the priority. Once you democratize the access to the data, and the data is accessible to all relevant teams, what then happens is that fosters a culture of innovation, of interchange, and actually it empowers the employees to deliver insights, that drive better decision making. Once you have obviously this well-known state-of-the-art financial systems, it's also a critical component, for the strategy. So you add the financial systems, you add the data, you have the foundations, and leveraging all these three components, then you build and you have, in fact, a robust and flexible and dynamic, uh, you know, starting point to build financial models. So that is absolutely crucial in the e-commerce landscape at the moment. What we are actually doing now, looking ahead, because I mean, in this function, you always need to be, one foot in the today, but the other foot needs to be in the tomorrow, right? So we are actually very, very conscious that machine learning and generative AI, and in particular the combination of those two together, that will be practically the new standard, right? Machine learning for forecasting, for dynamic pricing, and generative AI for everything that has to do with summarizing and writing the commentaries.
FP&A Today is brought to you by DataRails, the world's #1 FP&A solution. DataRails is the artificial intelligence-powered financial planning and analysis platform built for Excel users. That's right, you can stay in Excel. But instead of facing hell for every budget, month-end close, or forecast, you can enjoy a paradise of data consolidation, advanced visualization, reporting, and AI capabilities. Plus, game-changing insights giving you instant answers and your story created in seconds. Find out why more than 1,000 finance teams use DataRails to uncover their company's real story. Don't replace Excel, embrace Excel. Learn more at datarails.com. I love that you are addressing generative AI, but also referring back to machine learning. And I do see, so many people are just talking about generative AI right now because this is maybe their first exposure to it. But combining what we get out of generative AI with, sort of democratization and not having to be able to, not having to write Python or whatever to be able to access data. And then, but then also referencing back to machine learning, which has been used to, Amazon and Booking. I'm sure many companies where you've worked have used machine learning, even if not fully in the finance department, they used it in their operations, and certainly plenty of application for machine learning in finance as well. And I think I really think, and I expect we're going to see more crossover with this, but the idea of FP&A analyst, business intelligence analyst, and data scientist, there's the Venn diagrams where they all exist, have a lot of overlap in them. And I think that it's impossible today to talk about FP&A without talking about data and analytics. So the fact that you referenced data and analytics, maybe give me a little more detail about how you've leveraged data and analytics to drive decision-making in your forecasting and business strategy in some of the roles where you've been before.
Yeah, the reality is, for me, I think I have always seen data as absolutely core for finance, and for finance to be in the decision making and to be a co-pilot. That's something that I have seen from the very beginning. In fact, when I was actually in Booking, I had a mathematician in my team. I hired 2 mathematicians afterwards and a technical person, and that was part of my team in business controlling, which was quite unique, right? We are talking 10 years back. So that's to say that, yeah, for me, data is actually essential, right? And the beauty of data is what I mentioned before, right? So it democratizes the decision making, and with these data insights, when they are available to everyone, it is actually much easier to balance the power and to balance the influence of within the companies, which makes everything much more challenging in a way, but much more, equal in another way, right? So then you don't have that department in finance that is monopolizing the access to information. You don't have either the teams in commercial that actually are figuring out numbers that do not tie to anything, right? Where actually at the end of the day, you end up with meetings where people, instead of talking about what really matters and the issues in the business, they are actually talking about whether my data is more accurate or the other data is more accurate, and then you waste time, right? Coming back to your question and seeing how do I leverage data, let me share with you one example in CNA, which is not, I wouldn't say is the typical examples of a company that is technology driven or very much technology driven or digital, right? So CNA is a retail company It operates in the fashion industry. And it's, if you think about H&M, it's a similar, H&M would be a competitor of CNA, right? And it operates in Europe. So during my tenure in CNA Netherlands, you have the typical structure, you have the headquarters and you have the regions, right? And in Netherlands, we didn't have any visibility to key data. So the unit economics or profitability, that was all lacking. And we lacked insights, and that lack of insight really hindered our ability to make sound decisions. So the first thing I did was actually, when I was hired, I hired also a business analyst because, and this was very, very unusual for the company, right? They were actually saying, yeah, why do you need this role? I mean, what is that person going to do? Right. So I said, no, this is, I started the company. I need a a finance analyst, right? And I hired this person. I empowered him to find ways to improve, the country decision-making potential. So I gave him a broad kind of mandate, and we had kind of regular meetings. So to tackle this challenge, actually, the business analyst first built a strong relationship with different teams, both in the country but also in the headquarters. He had actually to understand the various different types of data and decisions and what systems they were using in the center, in the country. With that, we actually created a local database, a data system that could allow us to understand the economics, right? So the economics of the garments we were selling, the processes, how those garments ended up in our shop floors. And the system actually would track crucial metrics such as size bows, landing prices, expected discounts, time of arrival, and many more, right? As you can imagine, there were quite a lot of obstacles in executing this project, right? It was particularly challenging to build kind of the connection with the teams. And many of them were actually quite resistant of this change, right? And that was a challenge that I had to tackle myself. So practically the cultural change, that is something that I had to push for. The reality is that we were able to create some quick wins. We created reports showing products that were overpriced and were about to land in our stores. We created overviews to show stock. And by creating these actionable insights, actually the teams started collaborating, right? So that broke kind of the glass. And then we started scaling that, and that was phenomenal, right? And by integrating this information with historical data, and also with past trends and by product, by region, even by city, right? So we were able to generate insights that enabled us to analyze how future collections were likely to perform and to make proactive adjustments far before the products were coming to the countries. So that was also helping allocating accountabilities where they should be allocated, right? What I can say is that with that, we could influence pricing strategies, optimizing sizes, manage batches and deliveries up to 12 months in advance. And that was much more, it allowed us to make decisions much earlier. The reality of the matter was that this project was actually a success, had really a transformative impact, and not only improved our visibility and control the business, but actually, very soon all countries wanted a business finance analyst and also a tool similar to this one. So the tool was developed and became highly sought after, and the role of a finance analyst was pretty much standard.
Great. What I'm hearing here, and I hear this a lot when I talk to finance leaders. When you're an individual contributor and when you first start your career out, okay, I have to get really good at FP&A and I have to be really laser focused, and these are the things I do. But as you move up in your career, you have to know what your mission is and sort of the why of what you're doing and what the end goal that you want to achieve. So you have to sort of branch out from just doing what's in finance. And then, so I think a general business degree probably helps some in that too, but it's also what you learn along the way, because you talked about, hiring a position that the company thought, why are we hiring this position? But you knew the mission and where to go. And I think that another thing that we have to do as finance people a lot is how much we're crossing over with IT and software. And so we can't just know the metrics and what we want to get. And we have to start having an understanding of data and the systems. And I know before the show, you and I were talking about implementing BI tools, and we don't have to talk about specific brands or not, but I'm thinking about, I'm the finance person, and suddenly I have to figure out how I'm going to implement this BI process, which BI and finance, again, a lot of similarities, but they're not the exact same role. So I guess sort of continuing on what you were just talking about, talk to me about implementing BI tools and how you've approached that.
Yeah. So it's funny actually that you asked this question, because really, literally, since the beginning of my career, I have been involved in implementing BI tools. In principle, implementing BI tools typically requires a very, very significant investment, right? In terms of time, resources, and effort. So it's something that you cannot just decide in finance. It is a strategic decision. And once you have the company buying into the idea and buying into the need of having a BI tool, then the journey can start. And I can assure you the journey is challenging, occasionally painful, but I can assure you that a well implemented BI tool can really improve decision making, enhance operational efficiency, and also drive strategic growth. As I said, so I have really literally implemented several BI tools, but let me just focus perhaps on the example in Berlin Brands Group, because I think that is the closest in my experience, right? When I was CFO, I mean, in my tenure in Berlin Brands Group, I had the opportunity to implement this advanced business intelligence tool. And, initially, Berlin Brands Group used a Power BI tool, right? So we had it already, as you can imagine. This is a company that was already operating in e-commerce for 10 years. We had one, but the reality was that this BI tool was linked to operating systems, and it was actually not very well, from an accuracy point of view, it was not very good, right? So it had been created yeah, by need. You start adding one piece of information, a system comes to the database, then you start creating several metrics. And at the end of the day, you have metrics, they all give some sort of data, of information, but because you don't have that governance around the data and you don't have governance around definitions, what happened was that the results could be up to 10% deviations, right? Could bring up to 10% deviation. So we are talking about a database that was actually the core of the business, right? So you would decide whether to sell a product in a particular country or not, whether you would drop or increase a promotion in a particular product, right? Or whether you would invest more or less marketing in a particular product because you were expecting a profit contribution that was above 5% or lower, right? So it was a very, very critical tool in order to make really operational decisions, right? So what happened was that we all recognized the critical need for reliable and consistency data. And what happened, yeah, we said, okay, let's work with a partner that is very reputable. We were working with Quantum Black. This is the company from, I think, from McKinsey. And we worked with them for over a year to build a comprehensive business warehouse, right? And this initiative actually involved the whole company. So it involved establishing curated data, defining metrics, and very robust governance process. I think that is very critical. And once it was finished, right? So the new database really provided faster and more flexible data. We were actually able then to access information around profit contribution insights by product, by SKU, by country, by channel, all automated and all very flexible and dynamic. And really by ensuring that this data and the insights were consistent across the teams, we actually increased and improved the accuracy and the reliability of our analysis. What I was really, mentioning before, right? So you go into a meeting and then you already start talking about what matters, and you just don't disagree about the numbers. So that was very, I mean, not only a waste of time, but also very frustrating, right? Because it's very easy that you start into the finger pointing type of situation, right? So the impact of all these improvements was very, very profound, right? So decision making became much more efficient, and we could actually much, much better monitor project execution. The fact that we had consistent and accurate data, it actually enabled us, as I said, to make better informed decisions. And even what I mentioned, right, allowed us to introduce a dynamic pricing tooling. So I can only stress, I mean, if you can afford, you should think about implementing a robust business intelligence tool, because that opens a whole bunch of additional opportunities that without this robust business intelligence tool, you will not be able to harvest.
Yeah, great point. And I think, what so many companies maybe who have been behind on sort of digital evolution, I think that they maybe not even they may not even be where I'm thinking more of the smaller companies, hopefully the enterprise, but there are companies that still need to advance their data maturity. But I think you have to get to BI before you can even think of AI. And it sounds like with your background, and you sort of understand, or not sort of, you definitely do understand that the foundation of being able to use AI is to have this BI in place and to have a solid data foundation. And I know that you're passionate about where the industry is going and where the profession is going, and so much so that you've joined the advisory board of Women in AI Netherlands. And I think that for again classical machine learning, classical AI, we'll call it. I know companies have been using that for years, but more and more people are interested now in generative AI. So tell me about you know your desire to be at the forefront of this, and how you're seeing, and if you get out your crystal ball here and are predicting the future, how do you see the again, what we can talk about both of them. We can talk about classical AI and generative AI, but how do you see AI in general transforming what we do in finance?
Yeah, I mean, look, I really view the advent of AI in finance as a phenomenal opportunity. I mean, don't think I'm crazy, right? So of course, I'm aware of the risks. I'm aware of the ethical risk of the royalties and attribution issues. I'm aware of the bias. I'm aware of hallucinations. I'm aware of all those risks, right? And that's why we need to be aware, and we need to know how to use the tool. For me, nonetheless, artificial intelligence represents a phenomenal opportunity for finance, because the way I think about it is it's actually eliminating a little bit the barrier of entry into everything that has to do with data. In the past, in order to access data, you needed actually to know how to program. And now, perhaps it's not so much needed. You need to know just a tiny bit, but with that tiny bit, you can actually find your way, right? So for me, AI really represents a journey of evolution, of innovation and possibilities. I'm sure that we will benefit from digital transformation in terms of both professional and personal growth, increasing our productivity and sizing unforeseen opportunities. So I don't know anybody that does not know or that is not using today ChatGPT, right? So for personal use. So the way I think about it is I see machine learning and Gen AI as tools, right? And depending on the use case that you may think of, then the finance professionals will use a different tool. So we will use most probably machine learning for forecasting. We will use Gen AI for summarizing. We will use robotics, RPA, and Gen AI in combination for finance operations. So I, I guess what I'm trying to say is the more we understand the tools, the more we will be able to think about use cases that will be suitable to be solved with the use of these tools. So according to Gartner data, we finance professionals, we are actually quite optimistic and quite positive towards artificial intelligence, right? However, it doesn't seem really that we have started using these tools widely yet. And I say it is really important to adopt this new technology and get started, because even McKinsey is foreseeing the adoption in 4 to 5 years. Just let's think about it, right? So normal technologies take around 15 years to be fully adopted. So Gen AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, it's going to be accelerated. The adoption is going to be much, much faster. So, in my view, no finance professional should be left behind, because this is a great opportunity if we are, fast in getting into it.
I think in finance, we never want to be on the bleeding edge of a technology. I think leave that to sales and marketing, and maybe to some extent on the on the product side. But for us, we don't want to be laggards, but we're going to let other people go and get the bruises because we've got to have the numbers right. Again, I'm right there with you, though. I'm super optimistic. I'm trying to find ways to use it today. We still have a lot, there's still the hallucination and bias issues that you talked about. And I think that the tech companies are working through that. But I also, along with that, I feel like the entire industry right now is saying, yes, I understand it's coming. I don't know what I should do. So I guess, from your vantage point, what do you see as the biggest opportunities and challenges for these FP&A pros in the next 5 to 10 years? If they really, if Gartner is right and we are going to be fully adopting the generative AI in the next 5, where do you see these opportunities and challenges coming for us?
I mean, short term, the biggest opportunities lie in harnessing emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and data analytics. Combining machine learning, Gen AI, and automation, I really think it will shape the future of the profession. What was, a niche qualification, master in data analytics, now is somehow essential. So I think, I'm as you well said at the very beginning, I'm part of the International Federation of Accountants, right? I mean, one thing that we look for is, okay, how is the future of the profession going to look like? And for sure, artificial intelligence, the new technologies, is actually very, very much in the top of our agenda to see, okay, so how should the finance profession look like? So how should the university studies and the curriculum look like in order to accommodate these new, technologies and these needs that will actually shape the profession so profoundly? So yes, I mean, very important. If we think in 10 years, look, I mean, the most crucial skills most probably will be around cybersecurity, digital collaboration, digital ethics, digital literacy. How do you use these tools and remain being human? So how do you build on critical thinking, on emotional intelligence, and on social skills?
If you were giving advice to someone just starting out in finance, or if you were working on reskilling and upskilling your team, what advice would you give to the kind of the more junior personnel, or really at any level, if they're looking to build their career and keep up with the times? And it doesn't have to just be around AI, but what advice would you give?
That's quite difficult, right? I mean, it really depends on each individual, how each individual defines success. Okay, so for me, success meant climbing the ladder and having the opportunity to do what I thought it was necessary to influence and create value. And in that definition, one key aspect is hard work. But it is important, obviously, to know that many people work hard. So the true differentiator is not only hard work, but it's also your commitment to continuous growth, inner motivation, and be a little bit better every day, right? On a personal level, I can say that being bold helped me, especially being a woman. Young professionals need to master the courage to speak up, especially in the field of finance, right? And remember, in finance, we need a team to be able to think out of the box. So everything that helps you, critical thinking and use your head and not only your hands is super critical, right? So my advice is clear: work hard, continuous learning, be bold in pursuing what you want, express your aspirations, stay positive, and look, if things don't always go perfectly, well, that's okay. Have a long-term aspiration, work hard for it, invest in it, do not despair, continue trying. This is a marathon, it's not a sprint.
Before we wrap all of our shows, I do like to take a moment and learn a little bit about the kind of the who's behind the finance leader character. So one of the questions we always ask is, what's something that not many people know about you? And I typically will throw on the caveat of something that we couldn't just find by Googling you really quick.
Not everybody knows that I like kickboxing. I do kickboxing with my son, and that I enjoy karaoke. Long karaoke sessions with my family.
Oh, that's
Those
great.
things I love.
So I was trying to figure out how you could combine the karaoke and the kickboxing. I guess if there were critics in the audience, you could put them in their place. So, all right, that's great. And one that it's everybody's favorite question. And it's funny, I think it'll be 20 years from now and we'll still be asking this question, but because I think no matter what other technology is out there, it's going back to Excel is just, it's sort of our comfort zone. And so we always ask, what is your favorite Excel function and why?
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, in hardcore functions, I love ifs, some ifs, and VLOOKUPs. But the more, the one that I really use the most is the pivot tables. They are super flexible. They allow for multiple types of analysis, creation of new metrics. I still use them in the old look and feel. So I guess for some like me, the new things come a little bit too many at once.
Yeah.
But yeah, pivot tables are the ones.
Yeah. So I love pivot tables too. And I also still go to the old view of them. And I know people do all kinds of crazy stuff with slicers and, ways to do it. But it just, a lot of times I'm doing pivot tables just for my, because I'm not frontline FP&A reporting anymore. If I'm looking at something, I'm trying to find some answer. So I love going in and, I'll just take my data and start pivoting it and looking at it in different ways so I can get a good summary of it. So I'm in agreement with you there. So that's great. So, well, this has been great. How can our listeners connect with you and to learn more about you, especially your involvement in with women in AI and your other organizations?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm in LinkedIn, so you can follow me there. I try to be active and share things that inspire me. So that would be one way. I would recommend to connect and follow also women in AI in general, but also in the organization in Netherlands. That will, it will give a little bit of an idea of what is the progress in raising awareness of tech and AI in women and minorities. And finally, obviously, I mean, if you want to be abreast of what's going on in finance, follow the International Federation of Accountants website to be updated and to keep yourself updated on the strategic matters that affect our profession.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Dado, for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Glenn.